So I just got an interesting email from the brand Filippo Loreti. A lot of you guys have probably heard of them. This is actually the second email I got. The first one was just a request asking if I would be interested in receiving a watch for free to review on my channel. And I was not interested in having them on my channel. So I replied back and politely declined, but I did give them some reasons why. I noted that in the past I had seen reviews about their quality not being up to the value that they were claiming to offer, and perhaps more concerning, some questions about potentially deceptive marketing, particularly in regards to supposed Italian heritage or lack thereof. I really had Ben's video from a few years back in my mind. He did a pretty thorough takedown of the brand and of their marketing in particular. And so after I emailed him back, I didn't think I would get any response, but I did. And it was a pretty interesting, thoughtful response. So let me show you guys some of the things they said. They said, "You're absolutely right that in the past, Filippo Loreti received mixed reviews. We're not here to ignore that, but what I can tell you is that the brand has evolved significantly, and what you might have seen or heard a few years ago doesn't reflect what we're building today." Fair enough. So, okay, that got me intrigued. I was curious if that was true. Have they kind of reformed themselves? Have they learned from their lessons? Maybe Ben's video had an impact and they've changed. I was also interested that they did address directly and pretty transparently the Italian design thing. They said Filippo Loreti is a watch brand inspired by Italian design and Mediterranean style. We are not an Italian brand by location or production, and we've never claimed to be. Our components come from Switzerland and Asia. Our designs are created in Europe, and everything is assembled with care and intention. And they also said our team today is proudly international with designers from Italy, France, Spain, Switzerland, and the US. So I was appreciative of the transparency there, and it got me curious. So I headed over to their website. I took a look at the watches that they had on offer. The prices were pretty reasonable, lower than I expected. They had all the specs listed, so the specs looked pretty, again, reasonable for the price. So I bought one. So I paid my own money for this watch that I'm going to be showing you in this video when it gets here. I figured if I got a watch for free from Filippo Loreti and actually happened to like anything about it, you guys would probably not buy it. So I paid my own money for this one. And this is going to be more than just a review of the watch. I do want to kind of evaluate whether or not Filippo Loreti has evolved as a brand, particularly when watching Ben's video from 4 years ago. He kind of highlighted, I think, 3 main problems that he had with Filippo Loreti, the company. The main one being the marketing and their kind of insistence on selling luxury Italian watches at affordable prices. But he also brought up some concerns about their customer service. His experience in particular, he ordered a watch and it never came, and then eventually turned up something like 4 months later. So really bad experience there. And there were definitely some concerns with that even further back. Originally, Filippo Loreti launched on Kickstarter, and there were a lot of complaints on the Kickstarter page of people saying they never got their watches. So we'll try and take a look at their customer service, see if that's changed at all. Hopefully I will get a watch to review and we can finish this video. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot shorter. And when I do get the watch in to evaluate it, I want to look at it from 2 angles. One, just purely, is it worth the money they're charging? But given that one of the main concerns with the brand is their marketing, they make very big claims about their products. I'm not only going to evaluate it just what I think if it's worth it for the money, but if I think that they're being honest in how they're marketing their products. So is the watch as good as they're saying it is? So we'll look at it from both those perspectives. Now, I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait for my watch to come. Hopefully it's not going to be like 4 months. You guys aren't going to have to wait any time at all because I'm not going to publish this video until I've gotten the watch and finished it. But while I'm waiting, I can at least go on their website and start looking at their marketing claims and start getting excited for the watch I'm about to receive and see how good they're saying it's going to be. So let's head over to their website and take a look at what claims they're making in 2025. Okay, our story. Let's start there. We are a brand that wanted to change everything as Italian design lovers. Okay, so they're not saying they're Italian. They just love Italian design. All right, disrupted, overpriced luxury with exceptional watches. All right, discover more. All right, and there's another picture of Italy. So this is a bigger picture of Italy than they had on the front page. Their history, from day one, we challenged the status quo, far away from ever higher prices. We wanted to make luxury watches truly accessible. Okay, so that's kind of problematic.
sounds like they're saying that they are making luxury watches. There's no way to make a luxury watch for $200. And I looked at the specifications on the watch that I ordered. Those are not luxury watch specifications. But okay, so it's just one point here they're mentioning it. Okay, here's a more realistic, slightly more modest claim. So they say, our promise is to give you exceptional watches at an unbeatable value. That's pretty generic, but yeah, that should be what they're shooting for. They should be trying to give you good watches at a good value. And hopefully that's at least what we'll see. I doubt we're going to see a luxury watch for $200. Okay, I found something interesting. So this is on the bottom of their homepage. In the press section. So they have quotes from publications that have written about them. And some of these quotes are pretty crazy. So let's take this one from HuffPost. Filippo Loreti skips wholesalers, distributors, and retail fees to offer $1,000 plus limited edition Italian luxury timepieces for less than $200. Okay, so like I said, I know from the email, they said they're not Italian watches. They're not made in Italy. The company's not based in Italy. They're simply inspired by Italian design. So I guess at best you could say they're Italian-looking watches. But again, this idea of the watches being worth $1,000 or more but being sold for $200, I just bought one of the watches that's less than $200. And based on their spec sheet, I know it's not comparable to a watch that's worth more than $1,000. So I'm curious about this HuffPost article, where it came from. Let me see if I can find the actual article. Okay, I found it. And there's something interesting. So there's a disclaimer. This article is very old, from 2016. And it says at the top, this post was published on the now closed HuffPost contributor platform. Contributors control their own work and it posted freely to our site. So it sounds like they didn't really have any control over this content, is what they're saying. And this particular article was written by a Lithuanian blogger, style blogger. And the quote comes down here at this point in the article. And yeah, so there it is. It's exactly the same quote. So I traced this quote down too. I mean, if you click on the link here, if you click, it goes to the Kickstarter. And that's just a quote from the Kickstarter page. It seems to be implying that Forbes said this, but I couldn't find Forbes claiming anything about this. So it seems like they're just quoting their own Kickstarter page and then quoting it as if HuffPost said it. And it's a pretty outrageous claim. I guess we'll be able to test it at the end of this to see if I get a $1,000 plus luxury watch. But speaking of Forbes, they did have a quote from Forbes that I was able to find. But let's look at the quote on their page first. So on their page, they quote Forbes saying, Filippo Loreti's inexpensive watches, mostly under $200 in price, have outperformed comparatively superior timepieces from legacy brands in both Switzerland and Japan. So it sounds like this Forbes quote is saying basically the same thing as Huffington Post. They're selling watches for under $200, but they're better than timepieces from legacy brands in Switzerland and Japan. That's the impression you would get from reading this quote, right? But I actually went back and found the article that this came from, and they chopped that quote up pretty badly. So the original Forbes article, it was an article about how the Swiss luxury watch industry is on a downturn and how they're facing competition from smartwatches and fashion watches. And it's in a paragraph about fashion watches that they bring up Filippo Loreti and where Filippo Loreti gets this quote from. So here's the original quote. Between Daniel Wellington, MVMT, and Filippo Loreti, inexpensive fashion watches, mostly under $200 in price, have outperformed comparatively superior timepieces from legacy brands in both Switzerland and Japan. So what this quote is saying in context is essentially there's these fashion watches that are making cheap watches for under $200 that are not as good as the legacy watches from Switzerland and Japan, but these cheap fashion watches are outselling them. That's the outperforming that they're doing. They're selling more because they're doing a better job at leveraging social media marketing. That's an impressive feat from a business standpoint, and Forbes is writing about business, but it's not necessarily good news for people who are buying these cheap fashion watches. But anyways, it looks like all these quotes that they're putting on here are pretty old, and they've probably had them on their website for a long time. I would certainly be led to believe that I would be getting like $1,000 plus watch based on these for $200, even if they're not outright claiming it. Oh, wait a second. Okay, I found another one. So this is a journal article from May 24th. So this is fairly recent on their website that they posted. Let's see what this says. The Italian-inspired vision defining modern timepieces. The soulful distinction of Italian design philosophy. The universe of quality men's watches has traditionally centered around Swiss expertise. Names like Rolex, Patek Philippe, and Cartier command immediate reverence among watch connoisseurs. Yet Italian design philosophy brings something distinctive to men's quality watches. Filippo Loreti embodies this distinctively Italian approach to Swiss watches design. The Filippo Loreti legacy, Italian heritage reimagined. A profound appreciation of Italian design heritage. A celebration of Italian design sensibilities in their most perfect expression. Where Italian design mastery meets contemporary watchmaking innovation. Draws inspiration from iconic Italian landmarks and cultural touchstones. When you select a Filippo Loreti timepiece, you're choosing more than superior materials and movements. Featuring 316L surgical grade stainless steel, the preferred metal of renowned watchmakers including Omega and Tudor. Sapphire crystal glass, the standard and exceptional quality timepieces from Audemars Piguet to Tag Heuer. Premium Italian leather straps, reminiscent of those employed in the workshops of Panerai. Precision rose gold PVD coating. So they're talking about gold plating, gold coating, applied using sophisticated process found in the finest quality men's watches from prestigious brands like Hublot. So they're saying they use gold plating just like Hublot does. I don't know if that's a bigger diss to them or to Hublot. I mean, Hublot, they don't make solid gold watches. They're using rose gold PVD coating in their luxury watches. Okay. But yeah, again, they're working really hard here, dropping a lot of names of luxury watches costing thousands of dollars. Again, making direct comparisons that their watches' design and components are comparable to these luxury watches. I mean, yeah, they can kind of cover their tracks and say, well, we didn't outright say these things. But unless they send me an actual luxury watch, I'm going to have to say that this marketing is still very deceptive. And I don't have too much hope that I'm going to get anything near a luxury watch because, again, I looked at the specifications on the watch that I ordered. But there is one thing that does give me some hope that I'm kind of curious about. On the product page, the thing that they're making the biggest deal about is the case material, which they describe as a matte black nano ceramic case. I don't know exactly what that is. I'm hoping it's not like bioceramic like Swatch does, which is basically plastic. I really have no idea. But there are luxury watches that feature ceramic cases. So if this is somehow a ceramic case, that would be really unexpected. I would not expect a ceramic cased watch in this price range. So I'd be impressed if I paid $160 and got a watch with a ceramic case. But again, I really don't know what this is. It's interesting here. It says, meet nano ceramic, not your average case. This watch is feather light, which isn't usually a component of ceramic cases. So I'm curious about that. Scratch proof. Now that's something. So usually ceramic case watches are highly scratch resistant. Scratch proof is a really high bar they're setting for themselves. That's a term that most brands will never use to describe any component of their watches, not even sapphire crystals, because scratch proof means you can't scratch it. But that to me would indicate that this is a highly scratch resistant case, which again would be something. I'm going to have to wait until the watch gets here to find out exactly what this is. I will put it to test. I'm going to try and scratch it. I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait for the watch to get here. So that's another thing that we want to test, is to see how their customer support and shipping does. Well, that gives me an idea, actually. So while I'm waiting, I don't know how long it's going to take for the watch to come. I'm going to go ahead and submit a support question and just ask about this nano ceramic case. Is it a coating? Is it the actual case material? What's the case material? And see if they actually respond to that. And we'll see how long it takes and if we get more information. All right, the day is here. The package has arrived and it came pretty fast. Let's go ahead and get this opened up and hopefully we'll see in just a second here whether or not the watch is close to what they advertised.
All right, here we go. Let's get it out. And wow, that is really yellow. So first impressions, the dial looks nice. It's got a nice rough texture that kind of looks like asphalt. It fits the racing theme. Printing looks pretty crisp. Now, but here's one thing that obviously you're going to notice. The chronograph hand is misaligned. That's very common for quartz chronograph watches. They often do it. There's usually a way built into the movement to fix that. It'll happen during shipping or something like that. So it's nothing to worry about yet unless we can't figure out how to do it. Okay, so that's where it would be helpful to have a manual for the movement, and they didn't include one in the box. So I'm going to have to go back to the website and see which movement they used, do a little bit of research, see if I can find the manual for that movement online, and then figure out how to adjust this. I'll get back to you. Okay, I figured it out. So yeah, there's a little bit of a trick to it. You've got to hold down the chronograph pusher for a few seconds, and then yeah, we can go ahead and fix the alignment. Handset is nice. I mean, this is clearly an Omega Speedmaster style handset. Again, very yellow, but looks kind of cool. I really like the date. They color match the date. It's a yellow text on the date printing, so that's cool. Next thing that I'm noticing, I kind of hate the tachometer. That bezel just doesn't look good. It's this kind of gold. It looks like a sticker. I'm assuming it's an aluminum insert, but the printing is really kind of terrible. It's a little bit jagged. It's not very crisp, and it's very small. It's hard to read. And it's weird. This is a tachometer bezel, but they have a dive pip at 12 o'clock. So that little triangle with the loom pip inside, that's something that you find on divers bezels, and it's meant to be used in conjunction with a rotating bezel. So you would normally line that triangle up with the minute hand to time things. This is a fixed bezel, so it serves absolutely no purpose and is totally out of place on a chronograph. So a bad design choice there. Let's see if we can figure anything out about this nano ceramic case. Now, I did submit that question to their tech support. They got back to me pretty quickly, and they did confirm that it's a stainless steel case with a nano ceramic coating on top of it. So that's 2 for 2 on customer support. The shipping and the order process was great. I got the watch very quickly. It was not damaged in shipping, and they were very quick to answer questions on their website. But they're claiming on their website that this is a watch that's built like a tank and that it has this scratch-proof nano ceramic case. So let's go ahead and test that. I'm going to go to the underside of the lugs just in case, I ever want to use this watch. And I'm going to take a strap change tool, which is a pretty sharp metal tip on it, and I'm going to try and scratch the underside of the lugs and see if I can scratch this coating. And I'm going to scratch kind of hard, and oh wow, yeah, okay, so that went right in. Yeah, that's scratched immediately. Yeah, you can, okay, so yeah, you can see the black coating is flaking off there. So I did push pretty hard, but that was just with a metal strap change tool. Let me try this again on the other lug, and I'm going to try just pressing lightly to see. Okay, yeah, that's still scratched. So it's a faint scratch, but it's scratched immediately, even like just barely touching it. I could feel it catching on the coating and scratching. So not a deep scratch that time. Let's try a key. That's a very dull piece of metal. I'm going to push kind of hard, and yeah, it's messing up the coating. Okay, so it is scratching with a key as well. Okay, last one. I have a knife. This is just a knife. I'm going to try and scratch the coating with a knife, and again, yeah, it's slicing right through it. Okay, so this is definitely not a scratch-proof coating. It's the kind of thing that, this is just a pretty basic test, but I suspect it's probably going to take some wear and tear if you ever drop the watch or bump into a wall, or kind of normal things you would do. So the fact that they're advertising this as a super tough scratch-proof coating is, in my test, seems completely false. I would be very disappointed in this. Okay, let's take a look at the strap next. So yeah, it feels nice. It's definitely silicone, has that kind of very soft, slightly tacky feel to it. I imagine this would be pretty comfortable on the wrist. The buckle here is completely unbranded though. Typically brands would put their logo on the buckle as well. So the fact that it's not here kind of leads me to think that this is a generic band that they sort of attach to the watch. And the quality of the buckle is
pretty low quality buckle, I would say. On the wrist, it feels pretty good, but it's a little bit short for my wrist. It does fit. I have a 7.5-inch wrist, which is fairly average, but this looks like the kind of strap you would get off of AliExpress for a couple of bucks. So first impressions, other than the dial, overall it kind of looks pretty cheap. I don't really like the way it looks. I think it looked a lot better on the product pictures. It's not terrible. It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and wear it for a couple days and see how it holds up. I'll get back to you. Okay, so after trying this out for a few days, I don't really like it any more than I did before. I actually liked it a little bit less. One thing that started bothering me more was that sort of slight mismatch in colors. It does feel like the subdials, the bezel, and the strap, really, they're just slightly different shades of yellow, and it kind of really cheapens the look, I think. And the tachometer really does look terrible. It's just, again, it looks like a cheap foil sticker on the watch. I also don't really like that the subdials have a kind of metallic sheen to it. I wish that was more of like just a poppy yellow matte color. I think that also looks kind of cheap. And then you get the yellow on the band is just this really kind of bright, slightly pastel yellow that, again, doesn't quite match the more golden tones on the bezel and the subdials. I did test the water resistance by taking it into the shower, and it did fine. A 50-meter water-resistant watch should be able to handle that, so I trust that at least the water resistance seems to be accurate. All right, now that I have had the watch in hand, I've had a chance to evaluate it. Let's go back to the spec sheet on their website. I'm going to go through and rank the materials that they use, the things that they list in the technical specifications. I'm going to give them a rating, like a grade rating. And I'm going to give it 2 grades. You know, I paid 2,300 yen roughly, which is about $160. So I'll just grade it as if this were just any $160 watch. If this is the kind of quality or specification or component I would expect to find at a watch in this price range. And I'll grade a B as being average. So if it gets all Bs, it's just be exactly what I would expect from any $160 watch from any reputable brand. But since they are claiming that this is something comparable to a luxury watch, I'm going to also grade it against other luxury watches, like what I would expect a luxury watch to have, and see if there's any justification at all from the technical specifications for it being a luxury level watch. Okay, let's start with the case material. And this was the area where they had the potential to do something. This is where I was hoping and expecting that maybe this is the part that makes this kind of like a luxury watch. But as we've seen, this matte black nano ceramic case, this coating that they're claiming, this nano ceramic that they're bragging about as being scratch proof and almost indestructible, it scratches incredibly easily. It's still something though, and it does give the watch a nice look. I guess it offers some protection from corrosion. Grading it as a $160 watch, I'll give it a B. If I were grading this as a luxury watch, this coating would be an F. If I saw a luxury watch bragging about a scratch-proof ceramic coating and I got a watch with this coating, I would think the watch was a fake, so F for fake. The next thing they're boasting about in their technical specifications is the case back. For a $160 watch, I would still give this an A-tier case back. That grade has a little bit of an asterisk next to it due to the fact that this is a case back that, judging from the product pictures, they're using on pretty much all of their Ascari chronograph watches. So it looks like they just mass-produced one decent case back and then slapped it on a whole wide range of watches in order to cut costs. And they didn't even engrave like the specific model name that's unique to this particular watch. If I were grading this as a case back on a luxury watch, this would be an F. That reusing of the identical case back along multiple lines would be a big turnoff. And as decent as the quality is, it's not up to par with what you'd expect from a luxury watch. So let's jump down to the dial. They list it as a matte grained black dial color with beige printing. I actually really like the dial even still. It's not particularly original, but it's still a pretty good quality dial. And for a $160 watch, this would be an A-tier dial to me. But if you jump up to the luxury tier where you're spending $5,000 or more, this would be a pretty shockingly disappointing dial to get in a $5,000 watch. For a luxury watch, you have to have something special on the dial. Glass, flat mineral glass. For a $160 watch, that's a B. That's exactly what you expect in this price range. It's the most inexpensive watch crystal material you're going to find from any reputable brand, and it's fine in a $160 watch. If we grade this against luxury watches, it's an easy F. This would be another thing that, again, if you got a watch that was purporting to be a luxury watch and it came with a mineral crystal and you tested it and found the crystal is mineral, you'd think, okay, this is a fake luxury watch. Movement, Ronda Z60 movement. So at $160 price point, I like this movement. It's decent. Even though I like it, I'd still give it a B. For an A in this price range, I would expect something like a Seiko Mecha Quartz that has a smoother sweeping hand on the chronograph. Grading this as a luxury watch, if you saw a luxury watch that came with this Ronda Z60 Quartz movement in it, again, that would be an easy F. You would say, okay, this is obviously a fake watch, because a luxury watch at that price range would never have this movement. I don't know the exact price. I suspect it's probably $20 or less to source the actual movement on its own. And in luxury watches, the movement is often one of the things that really drives the cost up. So you would never see this movement in a luxury watch. Band material, yellow silicone strap at $160. I'm not happy with the strap here. I would have hoped for something better. So for the strap, I'm going to give it a C. On a luxury watch, again, this would be an F. If you got a luxury watch that came with this strap, again, you'd think, okay, this is a fake watch. Hands and indexes. The lume on the indexes is terrible. That's actually fine for a $160 chronograph. You don't usually see any kind of good lume at watches in this price range. On average, it would be an A if it had good lume. But again, for a luxury watch, it'd be an F. Water resistance, 50 atmospheres. This one's a little bit tricky. Again, I would give this a B for a $160 watch. So if it came with 100 meters, I would say that's an A for this price point. For a luxury watch, if it was actually having a mechanical movement inside, that would be fairly common to see a 50-meter water resistance on a luxury chronograph. The 50-meter water resistance isn't a big red flag. It would be a kind of a B as well. So if we give this an overall grade, as a $160 watch, it comes out with basically a B average. So from the perspective of components and specifications, essentially this watch has the bare minimum of what I would expect from a $160 watch. There's nothing in these specifications that really impresses me or would make me think it was a good value. It's just kind of mid. But again, they're drawing a lot of comparisons to luxury watches, and they want to make the comparison. They want you to think that you're getting a watch that is comparable in quality to a luxury watch while being able to pay way less, and that's absolutely not the case here. No respectable luxury brand would offer a watch with these components or at this level of quality. And if you're at all knowledgeable about watches, you would be able to understand that just by looking at the specifications that they list on their website. But that contradiction between all of the vague verbiage that they're saying with those specifications, if you don't know what those specifications mean, you will be misled. And I suspect that their marketing is misleading a lot of people. So let's see if we can come to some kind of a conclusion regarding Filippo Loreti. Have they really evolved or changed much since the complaints of a few years ago? Well, in the beginning of this video, I said there were 3 areas I wanted to kind of measure them on. Those 3 areas being their marketing, the product itself, and their customer support. And we'll start with the good news. When it comes to customer support, I had a really good experience. They shipped the watch very quickly. I did have a question. I submitted it. I got a response back in a timely manner. And so that was great. That was a big improvement from what people were complaining about. When Ben did his follow-up on Filippo Loreti, he said it took like 4 months for him to get his watch, which is unacceptable. Again, mine came within days, so I think that's a huge improvement. It's obvious that they have invested in their back-end order fulfillment and customer service, and I see 0 problems with them there, so great. Next, let's talk about the watches, and this is where it's kind of gets a little bit murky. If I were just strictly evaluating the watch as a watch in this like $150 price point, roughly $150 price point, I would say that the level of quality that I got in the watch that I ordered is kind of the bare minimum of acceptable. $150 is really low for a retail price for a watch these days, so you don't really expect to get a lot of watch for that money, and I didn't get a lot of watch for that money.
For around $150, $160, you can get quartz chronographs from Citizen or Seiko on kind of the gray market. So maybe some of their older models that are of, I would say, better quality than this watch. That said, there are also a lot of brands that are going to be selling $150 watches that will be of significantly lower quality than this watch as well. So if you are really drawn to the design of this watch, which I had some issues with myself, but if you really like this design, I guess it wouldn't be a terrible deal for you for this price point. But again, keep in mind the watch in person to me did look a lot cheaper than it did in the product shots. But the real issue here is the marketing, because Filippo Loreti is not selling you a watch that is average for the price. They're saying that they want to make luxury watches truly accessible, or that they want to give you exceptional watches at an unbeatable value. And by those metrics, in my opinion, they completely failed. There is nothing about this watch that approaches or approximates a luxury watch, so they're certainly not making an accessible luxury watch. And in my opinion, there's nothing exceptional about the level of quality or the components of this watch, and it's also not an unbeatable value. But even if they just went that far, it wouldn't be too bad. But if you look at their website, particularly in the context of the history of the claims that they've made, and even some of the claims that they still have on their site in the form of those press releases from very old articles of questionable authenticity, to me, this qualifies as very deceptive marketing. It does seem like they've toned it down a lot and softened their language. But I almost wonder if the reason for that is kind of that this is sort of like lawyer speak, where they've changed it from saying, we are giving you this to, we want to give you this. Or going from, these are Italian luxury watches to, we're lovers of Italian design. You know, these kind of change of things that, yeah, okay, technically it's true, but you're still trying to get people to assume that this is an Italian luxury watch without actually saying it anymore. And you find that kind of language throughout the site. So there's definitely, in my opinion, not any transparency here. In my opinion, it appears that they're still trying to mislead people while not outright lying about it. And so while it is good to see that they've made some improvements, overall, Filippo Loreti is still a brand that I don't particularly trust, that I don't really find particularly desirable. And at least in the watches I purchased to review, I found the quality rather underwhelming. I think there are far better watches out there for the money. And hopefully, if you've been following this channel, you're aware of many of these watches, and I've been able to show you some of those. That's primarily what my goal is here, is to introduce you to cool watches that are good watches that are affordable. And that's why I don't typically feature fashion brands like this. Anyways, as always, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'd especially love to know if there's anybody who has had a positive experience with Filippo Loreti watches. Do you have a Filippo Loreti watch that you like? Tell me why. Tell me what you think. Tell me if I was wrong on any of these points. Also, give me some feedback on this particular video. This one's coming out at a lot longer and more in-depth than I normally do. I try to only feature watches that I think are good watches here on the channel. So if I don't think it's worth my time to create a video on the watch or your time to watch a video on the watch, I'm generally not going to show it. Finally, if you're interested in getting a t-shirt like this one, you can pick it up on my website at justthewatch.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys all later.